Hey, thank you for watching / listening to another episode of whatever you're listening to. Paranoid American Podcast, Occult Disney, Paranoid Programming, Sound Science. There's a bunch of them, but whatever it is, I appreciate that you're listening / watching to this right now. And if you really want to support Paranoid American, if you didn't know this, in addition to being a podcast, we've actually been publishing comics since 2012, so over a decade. While I was still at Disney, I started this company to publish a little book called Time Samplers, and it's exploded into 60 different titles at this point. And the biggest one just launched, at least at the time of recording this, but it's at nasacomic.com, stands for Never a Straight Answer, and it's about Stanley Kubrick directing the moon landings. And I just want to show you some of the cool kind of exclusive things you can get by backing this thing early. So if you go to nasacomic.com, it'll automatically bring you to this Kickstarter page. And you can see, bam, hit our goal at the time of recording this, 100%. So it's definitely going to be made. So you'll absolutely get a copy of this thing if you back it. If you're listening to this in the future and this page isn't here or brought you somewhere else, then likely you can just buy it right now. So you have to skip all this and just buy the damn thing. But here's a couple little previews of artwork. Here's different variant covers that are for offered. This top left one, I actually have in print. I got a couple of prototypes printed up just to make sure that it would look good. It looks great, looks amazing, full color, gloss pages. It's got a nice hefty weight to it because it's 40 different pages of all unique art that you haven't seen before. There's also going to be a variant cover. There's going to be a hollow foil cover. And then there's a little postcard print that anybody that gets a physical copy of the comic in any form, they're going to end up getting this postcard size print here. Here's some different artwork samples from the 3 different artists that contributed to this book. And then here's the important part, the rewards. So by backing this project, you're going to get to pick some different kind of reward tier. The entry level one is this digital deluxe, which has the entire book in digital form. You'll get a PDF. It's also going to have an additional 8 different pages that aren't in any of the print versions just because they were maybe some were a little too spicy, maybe some were a slightly different art style, but I'm going to give all that in the digital deluxe along with some wallpapers and some MP3s and stuff. If you want the print one that I was just holding up here, then the entry for that one is $15. With that, you're going to get that little postcard print I mentioned. You're going to get a trading card. You're going to get a bookmark, and you'll probably get some other stuff because I always throw in extra freebies. You can ask anyone that's bought anything from Paranoid American. I hook it up with lots of extras. If you want the variant cover, which is only available in this campaign, there's a $19 tier for that. It also comes with an extra sticker. If you want the hollow foil, then that one is $29. These ones are going to be super limited. Like, these won't exist outside of this campaign for the next 30 days. So if you are listening to this in the future, sorry you missed out. You might be able to snag one in an upcoming campaign if there's extras. But if you really want this hollow foil, and you should, you can get it right now for $29. And then we've got a couple other tiers after that. We've got a 55th anniversary special for $55. That has the main cover and the foil cover and a sticker sheet and some other goodies. Here's the best value, basically. There's a $99 Cosmic Conspiracy tier, over 40% off of all the different things that are included. So this one's going to come with the main cover, the variant cover, the hollow foil cover, 3 or 4 different sticker sheets. It's going to come with 6+ stickers. It has the trading card, a bookmark. It has a custom Paranoid American Room 237 keychain. And I think the highlight of this is it's going to come with this custom embroidered Stanley Kubrick patch based on the Apollo 11 design. And if you keep scrolling down, you can see all the other extra reward tiers. All of the different items are going to be described in more detail. And I want to show you this patch right here. It's a 3-inch embroidered iron-on patch. You can put it on your Molex bag. You can put it on, anything, hats, backpacks. This is the first time we've ever done one of these custom patches, so I'm really excited about that. There's also a custom fake moon landing playset that you can select as an add-on when you go to check out. So speaking of, let's say that you're sold, you want to get a copy, you want to help support Paranoid American, you haven't used Kickstarter before, the easiest thing to do is you just click on this back this project button on the page. It's both at the very top of the screen and it's at the top of the page. So you can click either one, back this project. And from here, it's going to be like a typical checkout. You're going to select which of these different tiers you want. Again, I highly recommend this $99 Cosmic Conspiracy combo. It's going to have every single thing that the campaign has to offer that's exclusive to this NASA book. You click on that, you pick the country that you're in, and then you just click on the pledge button. There's one extra last step where it's going to ask you if you want to do any add-ons, if you want to throw in like a trading card pack or another keychain or anything else. You can get some huge discounts on the backlog of Paranoid American comics. But let's say you're done with that, you click continue, and then finally, if you don't already have a Kickstarter account, you'll be prompted to make one. You can link it to Facebook. The rest of the flow is just like any typical checkout online. So I really appreciate if you would take a look. Please just back the comic, back nasacomic.com. Anyways, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Ask about Illuminati, since the charting up Dux. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, should know what to chat for. Occult Disney, Video Land, Pinocchio. Occult Disney, as a bomb so below. Pinocchio seeks fun on Pleasure Island, where traffickers need just fallen minds. Captain Hook, the lost boy in Neverland, saving kids from Peter Pan's designs. Nemo feels to survive the Barracuda, and that nobody means no one. Snow White never took another breath. Bird Prince, the angel of death has come. Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more real. Occult Disney, ask about Illuminati. Occult Disney, we teach occult to everybody. Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know what to chat for. Oh, Occult Disney, the new brand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah. Occult Disney, it's a bomb so adore. Occult Disney, please enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome to the Adult Disney podcast, where we look at all of Disney's alien experiments and rate them. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but yes, it is Lilo and Stitch today, our favorite alien in the Disney sphere. This is Matt here as usual. There's Thomas, Paranoid American. How's it?
And I want to clarify, it's the occult Disney, not the adult Disney.
Did I say adult Disney? Ooh la la. Okay.
Which is another series that maybe we could put into the works.
I knew that was going to happen. Every week I'm like worried I'm going to do that, because sometimes I just flip the words around, portmanteau, that sort of thing.
My last big project was called adultoccult.com. Shout out.
Okay.
But yeah, now I'm mixing those two words up at the most inopportune times.
Yes. They are not, well, I mean, they are mutually exclusive. Okay, excuse me. I was about to say they're not mutually exclusive, but that would not be correct. I'm going to chart like extreme pressure changes around here to like melting my brain this week, like more than usual. I mean, yeah. But
and it's been particularly stormy here, which sets actually a great mood for watching a movie about conspiracies, which in my opinion is what Lilo and Stitch is. It's basically a movie about multiple real life conspiracies that, I talk about outside of Occult Disney all the time. So This one's going to be exciting for me.
Well, and there's full-on alien conspiracies baked within the movie, which, obviously aliens are just a mirror for humanity most of the time. So that's what we got. I usually do cite this as being like on some days like my favorite Disney movie, which I think it's kind of like a Casablanca thing where there's nothing particularly great about Casablanca, but all the pieces just fit together nicely, and that makes it great. I kind of feel like Lilo and Stitch is that. Like, I'm like, what stands out in this movie? I'm like, oh, there's not like a set piece that blows my mind. You know, the animation's good, but not mind blowing. But it really works for me. I don't know how it is on your end, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess the same. And my biggest challenge for this episode, I guess in particular, was that it was such a good movie, in my opinion, that like I had to watch it twice because of the end of the first one. Like I usually do, like I just kind of watch it without getting too caught up and taking notes, and then I'll watch it again the second time around. The second time too, I just kind of got like lost in the movie part itself, and the notes that I had were, we'll go through all of them. But really, it's going to be hard to not have this just be an episode talking about how much I liked the movie, as opposed to like all the occult observations within the movie, because it's probably top 5, easily top 5. I wanted to say 3, but I don't think I've ever seen the movie in its entirety before this week when I watched it for this episode. So it made a great impression on me, and I didn't find any of the weird background details, because I also think we're getting into the post-internet age of Disney, where people can like Google the people that were involved in the productions or writing the original stories, and they wisened up a little bit to not use as many problematic source materials, maybe. Although Powder wasn't that long ago either from this.
Oh yeah, I think it's a few years earlier though, and that might make all the difference because we're right on that like knife's edge of the internet changing society for whatever it's done.
When Lilo and Stitch came out, there was probably still AOL online CDs being mailed to people.
Yeah, it would have been the tail end, but I'm pretty sure you are correct, because I do remember my mother having piles of those around. I think she had some side job where she was actually distributing those. Maybe that's why there's so many in the house. Or maybe that's just what happens. They just load a dump truck up to your house and dump them in the late 90s or early 2000s.
They're like ET Atari cartridges.
So when we did Monsters, Inc., you were talking about how you were in the thick of it. Not for this one. This one actually apparently was primarily done at the Florida studio, but maybe behind other closed doors. I don't know.
No, so I started at Disney in 2006, I think.
Okay. So you were just doing the monster stuff like later down the line. Gotcha.
I was working when Monsters U came out. Monsters University was one of the follow-up movies, and I worked on a lot of the ancillary projects surrounding that one.
Okay, that's why I'm asking, because last week you mentioned that, and here we are at Lilo and Stitch. Okay.
This was also before my time. Unfortunately, when I started working there, like I worked in the place where the animators worked, but that was because they were all gone at that point. Like the actual production of doing a lot of the major work at Disney had already gone all the way to Burbank or elsewhere. And I think 90% of what we did in the post-production facility was in-park entertainment, and it was a lot of overdubbing and Foley. We had an amazing Foley stage for movies and stuff, but they weren't actually doing any of the final animation in the studio that I was at in Orlando at that point. It was all outside of Florida, as far as I know.
Okay. As for me, you came to this movie just now. I came to this movie kind of late, probably 2015 or something. One of those things where it's like, let's put on a movie for the kid. And we'd been burned enough by that point that, we'd seen Zootopia like 40 times and Frozen 80 times. So this was the one where we took the extracurricular route and put on like the weird sequels and stuff. We didn't dive into the TV show, which there's multiple TV shows. There's actually a Japanese version just called Stitch, and Lilo's not in it. It's now in Okinawa, and it's a Japanese girl that is meeting Stitch. It's still in continuity. Apparently, Stitch goes here once Lilo goes to college or something. So, yeah.
Has that made it back into English, or is that like a Japanese only sort of thing?
There are English subtitles, at least, possibly dubs, but actually it has never properly been released in the States except for maybe 2 episodes. Most of the world it has, but I guess that's like maybe in the States, like Disney sees that as possible brand confusion. That would be my guess, because it does muddy up the waters. Although in Japan, they'd love it, right? Because it's like, now
I mean, the
set
fact
here.
that it exists at all is sort of like the mud's there, I guess.
It is weird. Yeah, I definitely think it's weird. Let me see why this happened if I can. Main characters, other characters. Nah, it's not really telling me the history of the show. Oh, wait, here we go. In March 2008, Walt Disney Television International Japan started procuring its own animated shows with their first two debuting, blah, blah. Yeah, there doesn't really seem to be any particular reason. I guess Stitch is just popular. So all the Hawaiian stuff's just been changed to Okinawan culture, which is, Japan's Hawaii, more or less. So yeah, it is weird that they let that happen. It's not really explaining any process of thought in the article, at least. So, but there is lots of weird knockoff stuff in Japan. This one being an official knockoff, I guess. But you go to the festivals and there's like yakitori stands with like Mickey Mouse on it, and you're like, in America that just wouldn't fly. They'd get sued. They get their pants sued off quickly.
Steamboat Willie is fine though.
Right, but this is 10 years ago, and this is normal Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is weird bootleg culture sometimes. Apparently, it's supposed to be a pretty good show. I mean, if you want to sit down and watch a weekly animated show, but yeah, it just has a weird not released in the States thing. It looks like it's been released pretty much everywhere but the States. So that's pretty strange. Philippines, Malaysia, Ireland, UK. It's played in the UK. It's played in Australia. Just not the States. It says only 5 episodes have been aired in the States on whatever Disney XD is or was. So they've aired a couple and then stopped. Okay.
What are they hiding from us?
Yeah, maybe they're hiding a badass show. I don't know. Anyway, the Brits got to see it. The Aussies got to see it. So yeah, what is it the Americans can't see? So, but we didn't watch that. But we did watch.
Confuse us too easily. we're a very easily confused people. So they're just like, if we show this to them, they won't understand that it's just like a Japanese spinoff, and people will start protesting, and then they won't drink our products, and it's going to turn into a whole thing.
Well, the rabbit hole that we did go down was watching like the sequels for this. There's this is super confusing. There's, I mean, if the first one wasn't confusing, let's look at the soundtrack. Okay, Stitch the movie came out in 2003, which is the pilot for the American TV series Lilo and Stitch the series. But then in 2005, there's Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch, and that is set between Lilo and Stitch the movie. So
is that theatrical?
No, we won't be getting to that. But we did, in my house, we did watch them because I was just like, I don't want to watch. It was kind of like, I like this movie so much, I don't want to ruin it by seeing it 50 times. So let's do the sequels, the direct-to-video sequels. This is the time we kind of glommed onto that. Didn't do it for Aladdin or anything else, but yeah, this was like, okay, we're gonna watch these weird direct-to-video movies.
Okay, don't burn out the OG because you like the OG.
Right, and they were both pleasant. Neither of them were like great. I mean, they weren't as good as this, but it's like we get to see more Stitch. Yay, that's what they were made for. I guess to keep the parents from going insane and the kids thinking they're getting new material because they can't always tell the difference between quality.
I guess, yeah, that's interesting. If I was a kid, I wouldn't care as much about Lilo. I would just want more Stitch doing Stitch stuff. But watching the movie, I guess now as an adult and caring about regular story, like Lilo kind of makes the movie. Stitch is a little bit interchangeable in my opinion. Like it could have been a million different personalities that kind of had the same comedic effect. He's very much like physical prop comedy and lots of cartoony style humor in this movie, which I'm not used to seeing as much in the Disney movies as of late, or even the previous ones we saw. Like, people burning up and like skidding across the water until they disappear into the horizon, like very like Hanna-Barbera Looney Tunes style comedy makes an appearance in here. But like Lilo is a very complex character, especially Disney proxy all the way. Lilo and Stitch are actually both. It's a double Disney proxy situation.
Oh yeah, no parents as far as the eye can see.
But I feel like Lilo is the most complex young protagonist that we've seen in any Disney movie up to this point. Like she actually has a not cheesy pasted on the top for emotional effect backstory. Like she has an actual backstory.
Yeah, I guess we should talk a little bit about the guy behind this. More than most Disney movies, there is a guy behind this who did Stitch's voice, co-wrote, co-directed. Chris Sanders is the feller's name. He also made How to Train Your Dragon, a DreamWorks movie, which is pretty good. But yeah, he apparently in 1985 was thinking about Stitch as a children's book and became kind of a head animator for Disney during the Renaissance. And I was basically at one point asked, like, what would you like to do? And Stitch was what he came up with. His original idea was Stitch would land in like Kansas, ostracize all of the woodland critters around him, and then live like by himself as like a weird alien hermit. And then the idea came up, you already have an alien, he needs to have human contact or everything's like too weird. So that's they moved it to Hawaii. Lilo was you mentioned depth of character, but Lilo was a relatively late addition to the process. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, it doesn't, and honestly, it doesn't take a long time to develop a character that has some complexity. It's really just giving her real human emotions and motivations behind stuff versus here's Bambi, Bambi's mom's dead, sad for Bambi. That was kind of like, you can kind of see it evolve over time. Maybe the Hunchback of Notre Dame had a little bit of complexity, but it was still just like this cartoony character. Whereas like Lilo is actually lashing out and is self-identifying as lashing out, and even like tells Stitch that the reason Stitch is so destructive is because he misses his parents just like she. Like all those things stacked on top of each other turn her into more complex than any other Disney protagonist so far.
Yeah, just when I was doing the search, for the web pages, doing research for this, when I was typing Lilo and Stitch, when I typed Lilo, one of the first suggested results was like, is Lilo autistic? And apparently, there's a lot of articles on the internet, like considering, is Lilo autistic? Which I don't know. There's a difference between like eccentric and autistic. I think she seems more. I don't know. I guess it's hard to say, and especially not being in America, because like I said before, in Japan, it's like, that kid just acts that way. They've given it no condition. Like I have kids that clearly have conditions, and no one has ever said a word to me about what it is, because it's kind of a stigma in Japan.
Well,
so
we need to bring you into the Rockefeller Medicine fold, my friend, and then everyone gets a special label and a bucket and everything.
Well, I think maybe I mentioned in some podcast, maybe it was here last week, where I had a kid. What was he doing? First, he ate my foam dice. So I pick him up for a while and he's kicking. It's like a 3-year-old kid. I put him down. After that, he takes his water bottle, pours it on the floor, then grabs a laptop computer and throws it into the puddle he just made. So, something's up with that kid, I think.
Well, this is a fun activity if you're ever bored, but you can actually search online for anything, obviously, but you can search for any Disney protagonist and then say, is autistic? And there are entire articles on pretty much, because I've looked into all the different interpretations of all these movies that we've done so far, and I go on and I see what other people's theories are just to see if we're missing anything big. And damn near every movie we've watched, there is Winnie the Pooh autistic? Is Rapunzel autistic? Is fill in the blank autistic?
Yeah.
And usually it's yes.
I guess the thing here is Google really wanted me to know about it this time, where for other movies that's not the case, because it was like the second suggested result.
Well, there's no disadvantage to having your character post attributed to having autism, because now it can make itself on like the autism friendly movie lists for people and like the autism empowerment lists, and there's no downside to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I feel like just this year the language has been changing again. Have you noticed this on that?
I try not to.
Okay, I've just heard people saying recently they've stopped saying that and started saying neurodivergent, which I think is the same thing. But yeah, just as an interest, just charting where language changes. There's one. It's hard for me to keep up with all of the nomenclature, to be honest. I took it as a surprise when I heard that the R word was now the R word. Right. That wasn't even that long ago. I didn't realize that whole situation had changed. So how is that
in Japan has the terminology for, or you just mentioned that you don't even give kids names of like autistic. You're just like, he acts weird. So has that just always been the diagnosis?
Pretty much. Now, that doesn't mean that the kid hasn't like seen a psychologist or something. There could have been a diagnosis, but it's such a like stigma thing. Like they don't even want to tell the teacher what's up, which is kind of an issue sometimes. Like I've had lots of Lilos in my classes, you know, so that's pretty normal.
I mean, so Leela was lashing out because she was an orphan / indigo child, and we can get into that. So do you have orphans and indigo children in your classes?
Yeah, probably. I think I was mentioning, was it last week or somewhere? Yeah, I think it was in this podcast where I was mentioning that, you know, some kids just seem like they've maybe been around the block a few times if you consider reincarnation a thing. You know, like some kids just seem more world ready than others. Where Lilo, I would say comes across as like a few times with not that many. Like she's been dealt a bad hand. She kind of knows the ropes of society, but like in a way that's like, you know, kind of quirky, right? Can't just like kind of stay under the surface of getting noticed.
I also like, it's one of the first Disney main characters that punches a little girl in the face within the first like 5 minutes of the movie with like an audible like smack. Like she's the aggressor. She's going to town like ground and pound MMA style in the very beginning. And I just thought that was very out of characteristic for, so like this movie breaks a lot of molds in the Disney sort of formula. And I had to take like very special note a lot of them because they're all intentional. Like they don't accidentally sneak these little things in. And I wouldn't even say sneak, right? They don't accidentally have the character all of a sudden being violent, whereas almost every other character before here would be pathetic, or, you know, you would have some sort of pity for them in some regard. And Lilo, you obviously pity her because her parents maybe were taken away from her, allegedly, and we'll get into that one too. But that's her redeeming characteristic, is that, you know, she's been through this trauma and that she's acting out because of that. But she's essentially a bully, right? I mean, I would kind of classify her as a bully in a way.
Oh yeah, the other kids like run when they see her after that, right? So, but that makes her character more interesting. Nani, her older sister. I mean, she's a way more fleshed out than an average Disney character. Because I mean, we're used to princesses that don't have a personality, almost, right? So,
and yeah, so the dynamic between Lilo and Nani, I think it's important that very early she says, "I like you better as a sister than a mother," or something to that effect. And I feel like it was stated so clearly like that because we need to know that Lilo is a true orphan for that Disney proxy effect to kind of work. Because if you perceive it as the viewer that Nani is the you know, maternal guardian character, then you don't get to relate to Lilo as being like out by yourself, you know, completely abandoned by the world as a viewer to relate to that. So you also feel abandoned by your parents, Disney proxy style, right? So they make that very clear so that you kind of identify with, oh, this girl has no real parents or no real guardian around, which is even emphasized by that weird bouncer CIA agent, aka social worker, that is constantly telling Nani and you, the viewer, like, reminder, Nani is not the parental guardian here. Like, she doesn't know what she's doing. And in fact, you know, she's essentially putting this child at risk constantly.
Right, which is, I was going to say, it's kind of this one is kind of double proxy. Like it starts like already in one, and now we're going to get another one. The first one's the general Disney proxy. It's like your parents are gone. The second one is like, and now you're going into government land, you know, or Ving Rhames land. Who I do like that they made him, that he does the voice, and they're just like, just make him look like himself. So,
well, and Stitch represents like a super Disney proxy because he's an orphan, but he's an orphan because he was artificially created and has no parents at all, versus having had parents and lost them. So he's in like this weird new space that I don't think we've entered yet in the Disney proxy.
Well, I mean, he's genetically engineered to be quote unquote a bully. In this case, just violent and destructive. That's the whole point of Stitch. And for whatever reason, Lilo calms him down. That's the whole thing, right? But Stitch is supposed to be a force for violence and destruction. As per his creation. That's why they have the doctor. What's his name? Dr. Jumba Jukaba on trial, right? For creating an abomination.
Well, I guess this is the best time, I suppose, to bring up the main theory of this movie, I think, which is that Lilo is an indigo child, meaning that she's got some like extra perceptory sense, or she has some kind of supernatural ability, or at least perceived supernatural, and that she can, I don't know exactly what she's doing, but she can communicate and calm this alien. And we kind of have this inference that humans have a superior intellect compared to all aliens, because the social worker mentions that, he's been talking to these aliens since Roswell, and that he convinced the aliens that humans were the only food source for mosquitoes, and that mosquitoes were an endangered alien species. And that's the main reason that aliens have kind of left us alone. But the fact that he could convince in a galactic federation of aliens, not just one type of alien, but like all the different types of aliens, he convinced them of this plot, which means that I think it might actually be true. We can get into that too. But that Lilo is also evidence that she can kind of override the quote unquote genetic programming that was introduced to Stitch. Because again, like either humans have some superior intellect, or humans have the ability to produce these indigo children like Lilo, which explains why she's an outcast and explains why she seems wise beyond her years, and that she's got like 3 old ladies deep buried within her persona from like past lifetimes that are giving her advice. All that kind of gets explained if you consider that that's what makes humans unique in this universe, maybe in the real world, but especially in the Disney universe, is that they always have this like spark thing that could kind of be translated to Lilo being an indigo child.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's what I was saying with the classes I teach with the real little kids. Like, I'll have a 4-year-old come in and sometimes be like, "Gee, this kid's more mature than me." Like they'll come in and start doing organizational things that I didn't even ask them to do.
You don't do yourself, yeah.
Which I wouldn't do myself. Like they're like arranging their books in like a very specific way or whatever. I'm like, you can throw your bag there. I don't care.
We start asking them if they believe in aliens and see what they say. They might be a better authority on the subject.
Yeah, really. No, I do remember hearing the term bandied about a lot, probably about 7-8 years ago. It might just be, the YouTube videos I watch are very different these days, but yeah. So
I remember indigo children from the early 2000s before I even think YouTube existed. There was lots, because I've been a conspiracy theorist and occult enthusiast since forever. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, the concept of indigo children felt like an extension of like the flower children, but instead of boomers being the parents, it was now kind of like the children of boomers. It was like this weird millennial Gen X area where they were starting to have kids, and they were convinced that their autistic children maybe were like not autistic, but they were actually, little supermen in training, and that one day they were going to just turn into these like super geniuses. There's a lot of interesting correlations that run with this, with all different generations, where someone's like, "Oh, my kid's going to be special," but there was a very particular and acute name made for it of indigo children. And I think that they were supposed to have like a violet aura around them if you were able to take a picture of their aura, and that this was like one of these key indicators. But they could also telecommunicate with aliens. They could perhaps talk to the Earth. There was lots of variations on what exactly an indigo child could do, but the clear premise was that they had some extra super ability that they were able to tap into because of genetics that other children weren't. And it was like a tiny little portion. I don't know what the exact percentage was, but I feel like it would have been like less than 1%.
Fewer than we're claiming to be indigo children have them, I'm sure. Because you hear that, it's like, oh, that's got to be me, right? But maybe not. I guess the timing of this is about right for that. So yeah, because 2003, that would have been. I'm just looking at the writing to see if that even had an effect. Now here's one thing that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say another thing that backs that theory up is that we see the social worker Agent Bubbles, who is a ex-CIA agent, literally, like we're not saying that in jest. He actually reveals himself as a CIA agent at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. But he's assigned to Lilo before the alien makes contact. So I mean, you could construe it that like they knew that that Stitch was going to land on this island, and that somehow Stitch was going to make friends with Lilo. All that requires them making lots of assumptions or having some kind of prophetic or time travel device to like know these things. But again, it makes way more sense if Lilo is an actual Indigo child. That's why the CIA agent would be assigned to her. And that's why he would have known before the alien lands and before he even knows that Lilo and Stitch are going to somehow connect at, adopting Stitch as if he were a dog. Like all that happens after Agent Bubbles is introduced.
Right. So we could have a very different movie if it was from his perspective. Now we got more of a proper Men in Black sort of movie.
Yeah. And again, this movie directly introduces children to the concept of the CIA and of secret government programs, genetic manipulation, programming. All of these things are not introduced in like subtle, nuanced background themes, but like by name. Like every one of those things I just mentioned is directly, inside the dialogue of the movie itself, which I feel like is like an important milestone, or at least a notable thing here in the Occult Disney podcast. Like, at what other point do we have a Disney animated movie mentioning the CIA?
Did Recess do that? Of course, this is like a mainline one, right? Recess
like a
is
straight up Disney movie, not just distributed by Disney because
right.
bought ABC and got baggage with it.
No, I'm just trying to directly interface with that question. I was like, I think maybe I don't remember if they specifically said in Recess, but it certainly felt like they, was on the table.
It was implied. I mean, it was. Yeah. And the Doug one too. We noted that Doug and Recess, they had the 90s vibe of the ubiquitous conspiracy world that they lived in, where it wasn't out of the ordinary for like a Men in Black to just show up and you just knew what that meant because the archetype was so saturated in all other media. In this one, he's definitely a Man in Black. And then we find out CIA, Roswell. That felt very notable.
Maybe the first iteration of some of that stuff showing up, but being, more abstracted was DuckTales. Although in the Rescuers, I mean that was all, but that was more UN, of course. But yeah, they wouldn't say UN by name Did they say UN by name in the Rescuers? Well, I guess they did.
That was that's pro-globalist propaganda.
Right. So we got the globalist stuff with that, and then DuckTales was kind of like Illuminati coded somewhat, or a lot. So yeah, and then Doug and Recess are making it more like straight up government stuff, and here they're just saying it all on screen. Wonder what's upcoming that might do it. I don't know. We haven't done Treasure Planet yet. The Incredibles is coming before too long. So
Atlantis definitely, although Atlantis doesn't take place, it seems, in like that same time period that you'd have like a CIA, because CIA, we're saying the transition of the OSS into the CIA, which would have been the 40s, basically.
Yeah, and this was pre-World War I for Atlantis, so it had more of the tycoon industrialist thing going on there, which would have been of the time period. That would have been how that rolled then. Yeah,
back then you just had to be super rich, and you were automatically in the Illuminati / club, whatever it was.
Yeah, you just bought a ticket.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very global in the sense that, you were like an international tycoon and would not beholden to any country. In fact, the countries were like just these cute little places, like you'd have a summer home.
Yeah. Now you got to get on the app and hope that it's not too busy to apply to Illuminati, and it you might have a few errors. Come back tomorrow, even if you got the money in pocket. Yeah. You can't just go to the gate and buy a ticket for the Illuminati anymore, like you could back then.
It's all the internet, man. The internet ruined almost all of this stuff.
I was kind of looking at what was the impetus for writing this. I was wondering if there was anything on the Indigo children, which, there very well could be. It is mentioning that a notable influence in the writing of this was the Hawaiian economic downturn of that time period. Apparently, right around 2000, there was a lot of impoverished and dysfunctional life that many Hawaiians lived during the then recent economic downturn. And then Tia Carrere and Jason Scott Lee are, I guess, had both are from or lived in Hawaii, so they were kind of trying to give them some, colloquialisms and things like that to use in the movie. But it is interesting that an economic downturn is cited as being one of the prime influences on this film.
I noticed a few of those colloquialisms because they felt shoehorned in some ways, and it was like, oh, they purposefully added that part. But it was also very much this like colonialism, imperialism, sort of the erosion, I guess, of the culture, and that the only real remnants of it were advertising and putting on these shows for, these tanned, like sunburned, fat white tourists that were coming from, out elsewhere, Europe or America. And that was where like all the money was coming. That was, I don't know, it was a very like conscious way of presenting what Hawaii was. Because again, almost every other Disney movie so far, it takes place in the time period where like that culture was thriving, because Disney would typically lean into this one. So this is like one of the first ones where it's kind of like imperialism bad, but in a very subtle way. Maybe this is like one of the very first examples of kind of political messaging in a way, right? Like this feels like a political statement, even if it's very subtle.
Yeah, I guess that's where this one kind of stands out, because like a lot of Pixar films, you can be like, hey, this one guy is basically the was driving the train the whole time, right? Where most Disney movies tend to be very much by committee on design. This is the weird outlier. Again, it's the B team. They very specifically are like, hey, let's do kind of a Dumbo style film. The backgrounds are watercolor. That's going to be cheaper. All of that sort of stuff.
So is this another example of one that Disney didn't know was going to be a big hit, and they just...
This is like the textbook example of that. Basically, Treasure Planet was, I think, supposed to be the one that hit. Let me look at the dates and make sure that works out. It might be one before. Because that's another one of the most interesting patterns that's emerged in this whole series, is that how often Disney's B movies end up being the blockbusters. Yeah, the blockbuster was supposed to be Treasure Planet, opening in November. This opened in June, just like, hey, let's see if we can get some summer juice, and they got a whole lot of it,
Okay, well, I'm interested because I don't think I've ever seen Treasure Planet either, so I'll go into that one blind and see which one I think is better out of the two, just to see if maybe I shouldn't have gone to work into the animation building. I should have just gone right for the executive room to be like the tastemaker and let them know, which movie should be the A movie and the B movie, because someone was making those calls.
No, this is a bright spot in movies we're covering for me, because I really wanted to watch Lilo and Stitch again. That's cool. Treasure Planet's one of the ones I've been most looking forward to getting into for this podcast. So, yeah.
And because the name of the movie is Lilo and Stitch, there's another character that doesn't get a lot of recognition, but there was a lot of theories that I found surrounding Pudge. Do you know who Pudge the fish is?
Wait, hold on. Now I feel like I'm being quizzed and failing. Pudge.
It's okay.
I'm okay. Give me
Pudge,
some Pudge.
At the beginning of Lilo and Stitch, the reason that she's wet and everyone slips and falls is because she had to run to the beach and feed her fish Pudge a peanut butter sandwich. And there are a host of different theories on Pudge also being an alien, because it stands out so much, and because Lilo is able to somehow commune with this fish in a way that she doesn't commune with any other animals. That, again, Pudge might be, an alien from outer space, just like Stitch is, and that Lilo and her indigo child status is attracting all these different creatures from other planets because she happens to have this ability to communicate with them in ways that no one else can.
I guess it's better than seeing dead people. I don't know.
There was another one too, that Pudge has some kind of an ability to control the weather, although it got very abstract in how that actually played out. But I like it, and I felt like it was worth noting.
Yeah. Again, I'm just thinking of the screen of all where they're keeping track of all the aliens and Men in Black, and that maybe Pudge and certainly Stitch is on there, and then Stitch is like supposed to be a dog. Seems like you call him a koala, but I guess you can't really go and adopt a koala from the pound. So
right, and Stitch somehow has the intuition to pop his extra 2 arms into his body and hide his tentacles to be perceived as something other than an alien, I guess, which this is getting very nitpicky, but I don't know how he knew how to do that or why he would even care to do that. Just because he didn't look like a dog. Like, would the extra set of arms, the tentacles, have made all the difference? Maybe. I guess so.
Yeah, I mean that adds a little, tentacles. Most people don't feel good about tentacles, If you want to get the cute points, you have to get rid of the tentacles. But I mean, it could be like a chameleon sort of thing. I mean, like a heightened version of a chameleon where it's not even necessarily like a conscious. I mean, I guess they make it look conscious, but almost like just on an unconscious level, his body knows, okay, do this, do this.
Right. Well, and he also knows how to talk the whole time, which is a little bit weird because he doesn't talk until the very end when he gets called out on it. But he fluently speaks enough English to be conversational, which clearly indicates that he's heard and understood everything anyone said to him throughout the whole movie, too.
I think the explanation was Stitch was going to originally just make noises and stuff, but at some point they were just having script problems with him never using actual words. Like, you don't really get a resolution if he doesn't start saying, "Oh, that means family," that sort of thing. Sorry, I don't know how that voice came out.
That stood out for me really big. There was a particular scene when they go to the beach and he does like the whole Elvis thing, which is also Elvis, and sort of conspiracy theories abound. But when he goes to the beach and he does the full Vegas sequin suit Elvis, and then that turns into like this big panic, he's still just kind of making noises and weird gestures at that point. And it was kind of obvious, like, you can't be this developed of a character if all you're doing is prop comedy and making crazy noises. Like, you can't be Carrot Top and chairman of the board and still expect to have like a very, deep, complex story to get lost in. You've seen Chairman of the Board, right?
20 years ago, very stoned.
Okay, good.
I guess that's the way to watch it, but I'm not going to recall much from that. What else? Malibu's Most Wanted. I've seen that, Deuter's My Car. I've seen that, Movies I've seen but haven't seen. You know what I'm saying? I was a few months ago. Sorry, I'm going on a different tangent for a bit here. But did you see the Hulu billboards from like maybe a month or two ago? They're running a bit on the social medias. This is where synergy has gotten stupid. There's a billboard, which I'll just describe to you, I guess, but it says Ohana means, and then it has Peter Griffin's head bursting out of the billboard. So one, you have to know who that is and know that he's on a show called Family Guy. And now you're going to work out Ohana means Family Guy. It's just such weird, specific, pointless synergy. It's like
you're
advertising.
Have to explain this one to me. How does Ohana mean Family Guy?
Because Hulu runs both Lilo and Stitch series and Family Guy series, so they can promote both together. So they just mashed them in like this completely like abstracted, dumb way.
Yeah, it wouldn't work on me, but I'm also very stupid.
Okay, no, yeah, it's it's like one of those. What do they call the books where it has the pictures for some of the words? It's like that.
Oh yeah, the pictogram or pictographs.
Yeah, it's a pictogram billboard but you have to have pop culture knowledge basically to decipher it, you know? So, I mean, not deep pop culture knowledge. It's just like in 100 years, someone would see that and not be able to make head or tail of it, right?
I mean, there is intersection between people that like Lilo and Stitch and Family Guy, but there's also not a lot of intersection.
And you're probably not going to think about both at the same time and or together. So,
I mean, I am now, and it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It was just bizarre synergy. And I guess that's how everything's turning into a cultural soup owned by, you know, how many media companies are we down to now? For one, if we're being realistic.
I assume if they were using any sort of actual Disney iconography, then Hulu had to get Disney buy-off in order to make that sort of mashup billboard of Family Guy and Lilo and Stitch, right?
The rest of the billboard, it says Hulu on, and that's like Peter Griffin. It's like being revealed, like it's behind the actual billboard. And then, so Hulu on, and then Disney Plus. So both logos are there.
Okay.
It does have a Disney Plus logo on it. So,
I mean, the ultimate point here is that there is a direct connection and official sign-off between Disney and pedophile jokes, which Stewie Griffin makes constantly. One of the most famous one being the Kevin Spacey, where he like shows up naked and he's like, "Help me! I just escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement." So now there's like a direct corporate signed-off mashup between Disney IP and Stewie Griffin pedophile joke IP.
Correct. It's just again, I've never had a streaming service, so I don't really understand the world of streaming anyway. But it's just like such a weird mess, you know. If you want to watch all the Minions movies, you have to go like 3 different streaming services or something. And that could be different now. I don't know. So I've been very happy not to have those headaches personally.
I've been sailing the 7 seas since the 90s, and the water's nice out here, so I'll just keep it at that.
Yes, I concur. Like with a TV show, it's like I'll do it that way, and if I really like it, I'll probably buy it on physical media later on. You know,
bah humbug to physical media.
I like having my stack of Blu-rays around. It's fun. It's fun to look at. I got that collector mentality.
When you actually have to open the case and put the disc in and like go through the whole. There's just something weird about the fleeting nature of streaming, where at any point you can be like, "Yeah, I'm going to pause this. I'm going to jump to something else. I'll come back to this later."
But you never do. You never go back to it.
No, of course you don't.
So I guess that's for me one of the pluses of physical media. If I start this movie, and there's a few, I started the movie Midway, the recent is it Emmerich one, which I mean it's not supposed to be that great, but I'll watch a big dumb Roland Emmerich film, and I got 20 minutes in, and it was fine, and I've never watched any more of it, and that was like 2 months ago. I got it for like $2, you know, at a used store. So it's like let's see what happens here. But I'm a little more inclined to finish like that one. I might at some point put on again, you know, whereas if it was streaming or just on my computer, I'd never get back to it.
Do you know if Lilo and Stitch fits into the vault model of Disney? Like, does it come in and out of the vault like other movies?
Oh, that's a good question. I have, let's see, casting, home media, released on VHS and DVD on December 3rd, 2002, more than 3 million copies on the first day. Wow. Okay. 2003, a 2-disc version was announced to come. It doesn't look like it's a vault, but it does seem like it's had weird hodgepodge releases, sometimes with Lilo and Stitch 2. Like it was like special features are on DVD, movies are on Blu-ray. It doesn't seem like a vault thing. They do some kind of re-release every 5 years, but I don't think 5 years. Vault would be more like 10 years plus, right? So. I mean, Lilo is not included with princesses, is she?
Yeah, that's a great point. But she is an Indigo child, which puts her on the same status or perhaps even higher than a princess, because princess is just nepotism, right? But being an Indigo child is something more notable than just being born, you know, to a fancy genital.
And I guess Lilo's a little too young. Our princesses are what, 14 to 18 usually. So Lilo can't fit in with the teenagers. And Nani doesn't really fit that at all. I guess Nani is not a indigo child, or well, she's just haggard with the stresses of reality. Maybe she used to be. I don't know.
I don't know, man. I guess that's a good question. I would vote Nani no, not an indigo child,
Nani,
because
no.
I feel like she would have shown that at some point, or maybe she had it and lost it. There's also, so I guess one of the other theories that's interesting here is that either A, the parents are not dead, they're just other CIA agents or something, or they're both dead because they were in the CIA. And that would also explain why all of a sudden Lilo has this like private CIA security guard watching after her that could be literally anywhere else other than this, island without big cities or any other population. So
they tried that for the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies, if you remember, or if you bothered to watch them, which you really don't need to.
I think I might have, but it felt like another rehashing, and all I really have ever cared about has been Uncle Ben's backstory. So was there something that didn't involve Uncle Ben in that Spider-Man backstory?
Yeah, I think I don't remember the details, but basically the Parkers, Peter's parents, are now in this movie's context. They were, I don't remember if they were specifically CIA, but they were kind of spies and, more like vanished on a mission. And that's why Uncle Ben and Aunt May are in charge, or his legal guardians now. So it's not like they just, I guess original Spider-Man never really says what happens to the parents. So in this one, they're just like, oh, they tried to paint what you're saying, like, the parents were in a car crash, but it was really the CIA and they were spies. That sort of thing is used in those movies. That being Sony, but
it's weird how I know this is total tangent area, but it is weird how the Marvel universe and the MCU and just the Marvel movies in general strays so far, and I don't mind it as much, especially when they get into all this weird dimension stuff. But it is so weird from actually reading Spider-Man as a kid and getting like lost in the stories to go from like a withered old white-haired Aunt May, like the one that you would see in like the Tweety and Sylvester cartoons, like hunched over, bleached white hair from just age and like the glasses, you know what I mean? Like that was the Aunt May that we grew up with. And then they throw like Marissa Tomei into the mix and they're like, now this is Aunt May. Like at that point, sure, Spider-Man's parents are Indigo CIA agents and aliens and whatever, man.
And Spider-Man himself is no longer a scrappy high schooler. He is now Tony Stark's military industrial boy toy. I know they tried to retcon that out again as the movies go on, but still, it's like you spent a lot of time doing that. He's got chevrons on his costume,
I mean, he is the most corporate friendly of many of the superheroes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Although, it is weird, like, in my movie podcast, we quickly found out there's not much to talk about with superhero movies. I thought, oh, we'll be doing so many superhero movies. We did about 3. We did Spider-Man 2 and realized that we maybe in a 50-minute podcast only talked about Spider-Man 2 for like 10 minutes because there was nothing to talk about. It's just the Marvel movies are very, and I like a lot of them quite well, especially the phase 2, 3 ones. But it's basically like, here's your plate of junk food, enjoy. And it's pretty good junk food.
It's similar to some of the movies that we do on here where like the movie itself provides a certain amount of fodder, but sometimes the real details are the original writers behind it and some of the sketches that didn't make it into the final movie and all those. And that's essentially like if you were to do the comic books, if you just read the comic books themselves in addition to the movies they were based on, now you've got all that extra, feedback to throw into it because the comics would go in so many different angles. I mean, it was clearly a different demographic than someone that wants to sit down and get like 200 comics worth of storylines in, 2.5 hours with Michael Bay style special effects.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the guy that was behind this movie for the most part, he did that Harrison Ford Call of the Wild a few years ago. That's kind of weird. With the one with all the memes of Harrison so stoned that he's talking to his dog or whatever.
I don't think I've seen that one.
I haven't seen the movie. I just saw the memes, but it's interesting that he did that. Yeah. Oh, yes. By the way, there's a live action version of this coming out apparently by the end of the year. They've
Lilo and
already
Stitch?
made it. Yes, they've already made it. It exists now. I guess it's in post-production. I was like, I was like kind of joking scrolling down the wiki last night. I was going to say there's already one, isn't there? Yes, there is.
Again,
And
so the three most interesting patterns I think we've come across when this show, A, the Disney proxy, B, the fact that Disney has no idea which movies are going to be the good ones versus the bad ones, and C, this new dynamic of like pump out the live action and it doesn't matter if it's good or not because it will reinvigorate sales and interest in the original IP, which means more sales on all of everything, the backpacks and the t-shirts. We might get some Lilo and Stitch Snickers bars and everything that you can imagine.
And time keeps compressing. At first, it was like, oh, we're doing our really old movies. Here's a live action, quote unquote, live action Pinocchio. Here's Alice in Wonderland. And time is compressing. The original Lilo and Stitch is only 20 years ago. I believe a live action Moana is also in the works. I'll double check on that to see that wasn't like a fever dream or something.
At what point do they start dual releasing the animated version and the live action simultaneously, where you buy the Supreme ticket and you watch them both back to back?
That, I guess, once again, time is compressing. Here we go. A live action remake is scheduled for release on July 10th, 2026. With Dwayne Johnson reprising his role. And wait. Oh my God, this is so confusing. This year there is Moana 2, an animated sequel. In 2 years is a live action remake of the original. It's like they're falling over themselves now making these.
Well, see, I mean, this I think is a little bit genius because the same way that Asylum films and many others, but Asylum is one of my favorite examples of like the snakes on a train or the transmorph bots or something, the transmorphers. This is where you get the intentional audience confusion where they accidentally watch your movie instead of the movie they wanted to watch. But now if it's the same studio, if it's Disney that's doing that and it's like, oh, I wanted to watch, it happened to me. We watched The Rescuers and I accidentally watched The Rescuers Down Under and it wasn't super obvious until I got far enough in. I was like, oh crap, they're in Australia, but it wasn't made obvious. Now you can do that with a Disney movie where you're like, I want to watch Lilo and Stitch. And if you just throw the dart at the wall, you could see one of like 7 renditions of it and then be like, well, crap, I just gave that streaming statistic, I just fed that algorithm, but now I need to go and watch the real thing. And I feel that that's kind of like a genius way to approach this, because now you release one movie, and even if it's not because you saw the live action and you're like, oh, that was crap, let me go and watch the original again. Now it's like you accidentally watched crap, and then you accidentally watched the other one when you thought you were going to watch the original. And just introducing that confusion within yourself, like you're not going to sue yourself for confusing consumers. So it's kind of win-win in so many ways.
And it's on every scale. I just ran into this pretty much yesterday, actually. This is going to connect. But do you remember the hip hop group PM Dawn? Early 90s.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I found
they were famously mocked in the Fear of a Black Hat movie. If you
right, because they had no street cred, right? So, but I found their first CDs for like 50 yen a piece. So I bought the first 2, and they're fun. I mean, now it's it's like weird psychedelic. It's like Indigo child hip hop, right?
It is. Oh my God, that's such a good way to phrase it. Yeah, PM Dawn should have had a song on the soundtrack for this.
Yeah. Anyway, the point being, first 2 albums, pretty good albums. So I'm kind of looking around. I just want to see look at their wiki and stuff. So apparently, they made a few more albums. It was 2 brothers. The DJ producer brother quit, leaving just Prince B, the rapper. He died of diabetes in 2016, and he brought on his cousin as the second guy. So his cousin is now PM Dawn, having nothing to do with the 90s act, To add that, since he's not part of that original act, he makes no royalties or anything. So apparently he re-recorded the songs with himself singing and rapping, and he's not as good as his cousin. And on most streaming services, if you look for PM Dawn, you will get these more recent versions, so this dude can make some money. But that's like you're saying with Stitch, you might not ever get to the movie you want to watch may actually not be available at some point, and you end up watching Stitch Has a Glitch.
And there's a new generation that could grow up not knowing the real PM Dawn, or they hear the new PM Dawn and learn that that's PM Dawn, and hear the old one and then be like, oh, I like the original better, but they don't actually know which the original one was. And the same thing will end up happening in all these Disney movies, where there will be a generation at some point that'll think that the live action Lion King and the live action Rapunzel and all those live actions were like the original ones and the animated ones weren't.
Yeah. So it's such a muddled mess. I guess that's why, Disney's corporate Disney culture at this moment is such like a weird, surreal, shit fest or whatever. I mean, they don't even know how to make money anymore, do they? or maybe they don't need to. Maybe they don't need to in some ways. But that's where the insurance of these movies probably helps, because there's that stream coming, if nothing else.
See, that in my opinion is really the crux of it all, is that they don't need to make money. And that's the whole, I guess, what gives the potency to Occult Disney, is that if they don't need money, then what are they in it for? Well, they're in it for just mass programming and instilling themselves as this like global archetype that'll outlive all of us. And in magical terms, right? If we can't recognize the technology for what it is, then we see it as technology, something Arthur C. Clarke. But that them recasting the spell constantly in the form of live action and then animated and then like these reboots and throwing in Japan and making these toys, all of that is just magical rituals that are constantly strengthening the spell that they've got everyone under. And if you truly look at it in those lens, then all of the re-releases and all of the weird offshoots make a perfect sense. You don't even have to sit and wonder. It's just because they want to recast the spell over and over.
That's where at the beginning of this podcast I was saying I went into that little part of the spell basically because I did not actually want to watch this movie 50 times, and I was like, okay, let's expand this world, even though the other stuff like isn't really as good.
So the original movie is the best version of Lilo and Stitch compared to the TV shows and the movie offshoots. Well,
we watched the movie offshoots. We didn't watch. Maybe we watched 1 or 2 episodes of the TV show. But I maybe the TV show is phenomenal. I don't know either way.
U.S. or Japanese show?
Both. I mean, I don't know anything about those. So the ones we watched a couple of the U.S. ones because they were easier to find. But just like 2, like by that point she was on to something else. So we all like Lilo and Stitch, but I guess it doesn't quite have the holding this is not a statement of quality, but maybe it doesn't just hold on to one's imagination as much as some other properties do.
Is it Lilo that makes the difference, or is it just an underutilization of Stitch that makes Lilo and Stitch better than any of the other ancillaries?
I think a lot of it is Lilo, to be honest, because that's such a well-drawn character in an animated film.
Which is interesting, because Lilo would be hard to market the same way you could market Stitch. Like, what's the Lilo Happy Meal toy do? You know what I mean? Compared to what the Stitch Happy Meal toy does.
I'd make a plastic, like, like a bouncy head Lilo for your car dashboard. That would work, right? They're doing the hula on a ukulele. Yeah. Oh yeah, as a guitarist, I did, and a ukulelist. Is that a word? It did annoy me when they called the ukulele a guitar, because sometimes my kids do that. They're like, I got a ukulele, a guitar. I'm like, no, it's not a guitar. I'll have a guitar a different day, because sometimes I have a guitar as well.
That sounds like the nerdiest thing you could ever really care about.
Yeah, that's what happens when you obsess with music. I've been called a muso before. I was in a work apartment for like just a month, but since I just come back to Japan, I had like a couple synthesizers and guitars lying around, and the person who was going to take it next came in with their friend, and their friend in an Australian accent, like, "Oh, you're a muso," like it's an insult. So
I've never heard that term before.
That's the only time I've heard it. Yeah, but I was like, I thought being a musician was cool. I guess not.
I've also heard the Australian term for taking a smoke break is a smoko. So it's like, I'm going to go and take a smoko. Do they just add an O to the end of things and think they made a new word?
So sometimes, sure. Squiz, there's a good one. take a squiz at something. Sounds
I
dirty.
don't know what that means.
That just means take a look at something, apparently. So, but I found that's kind of useful. It's kind of it's like a more casual way of saying if I'm going to take a look at it, I sound serious. But if I'm going to take a squiz at it, it sounds kind of a casual or dirty.
But also, no one knows what the hell you're talking about.
Well, if you're in Australia, they do. I've had a few more weird ones come my way. I guess that's, I live in a relatively international environment where my coworkers are Aussies or Brits or whatever. And sometimes, you just get weird words coming your way. So
that makes me think, like, what could Stitch have wound up in any other place on the planet and had this work out the same? Because, like, Australia, large enough continent that they've got cities. New Zealand, if it hit New Zealand, it would have found a city at some point, but it hits a small island in Hawaii that has no cities in it, which puts Stitch out of his element, which then, like, leaves him, I guess, vulnerable to, like, the programming that Lilo is giving him. You know what I'm getting at? Because his original programming is that he has to find a city and then just start causing destruction on the infrastructure. But there is no big city and there is no infrastructure. So he's kind of like struggling to figure out what to do with himself.
Okinawa actually is a pretty good proxy fit for Hawaii. And I when I was looking at the show, I was curious because I've been to Okinawa several times. Which island is it supposed to be? And I figured out it's a fictional island, but apparently based on it's like a 2x3 kilometer island that just has a little town in the middle, like of really old looking Okinawan buildings. And that's where they put the first 2 seasons of the show on that little island that has a village and no cities. And in season 3, I think Stitch goes to a city. So I'm sure that's for the plot or whatever. Maybe they need to go see if he's going to destroy that city. Speaking of which, are you familiar with the change at the end of this film?
No. What's the change?
Okay, and they're doing they're in the spaceship, right? Flying through the tropical forests and stuff. In the original, they are flying through Honolulu in a 747. But right as they finished animating that, 9/11 happened, and they're like, "Oh crap, we can't have a jetliner flying precariously through a city." So they took the basic animation, redid everything. But if you look at that spaceship, it still has basically 747 engines that are now red.
I can see that now, and I'm also thinking if Stitch's main thing is to destroy city infrastructure and to cause mass chaos and mayhem, did Stitch do 9/11?
That's where they did the quick cleanup animation, right? So they're like, "Oh no, we're incriminating him. Everyone's going to know."
I mean, I almost feel like there might be a better thread there that Stitch is responsible for 9/11, because that would be the thing that he would do, right? If you were to unleash Stitch on the United States, I mean, he's essentially becoming a terrorist. He's becoming a domestic, or I guess an alien terrorist, foreign terrorist. But to cause the most havoc is exactly what 9/11 was supposed to do. So,
and maybe. I should see. I think the plot basically played the same as it did in the movie. It's just the background changes. Critical reaction, box office. Here we go. Ordered scene. Oh, here's the second one, which I did notice. I was watching the original. There's a scene where Lilo hides in a clothes dryer, and that is changed to a cabinet in a pizza box or something because they didn't want kids trying to hide in clothes dryers. So there's another change they made. Here we go. The original scene, both flying in sideways position. Okay, I'll just read straight from here. One ordered scene in the film involves Stitch, Nani, Jumba, and Pleaky hijacking a Boeing 747 jet from Lihu Airport that scrapes against buildings through downtown Honolulu. But after the September 11 attacks, with only a few weeks left in production, the climax was reworked to have them use Jumba's spacecraft instead. The location was also shifted to have them fly through the mountains of Kauai instead. But yeah, the engine is still there when you look at it. So
this was the real tragedy of September 11th, is that a bunch of animators had to scramble in the final moments of Lilo and Stitch and rework things.
I mean, this was released in June 2002. They had it's not like they had to scramble. I think they had some time. It's just like, I guess I don't know how animation works, but I guess there is a like, here is your deadline date. You're doing nothing after this. So
yeah, I guess what's interesting is the connotation there is that if people saw that, then they would be reminded of, the horrible tragedy, and then they would relate that tragedy now to Disney, and Disney doesn't want any part of that aspect. But it's also, maybe it's real, like maybe there's part of that that's real that's like triggering it again, but it also feels like insulting the audience a little bit. Like, you are so stupid that if you see a plane hit a building, you're gonna think that Disney was in on it. And now that I say that out loud, I absolutely know most people that I know would be like, oh, Disney was totally in on 9/11. Did you see the predictive programming where the plane scratches the side of the building in Honolulu? Like, clearly that means that Walt Disney had been planning 9/11 since, the 40s.
Seth MacFarlane missed the plane that day. Family Guy.
Oh, dude, a lot of people did. What wasn't
Mark Wahlberg was.
I think Michael Jackson too had played like some large show at Madison Square Garden and was too tired to make the plane. I might be misconstruing the artist there, but I thought it was Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm. No, I just remember hearing the MacFarlane, Mark Wahlberg quotes a few times as being people that did not. But yeah, I'm sure there are a few more people. Of course, I don't know. I've never missed a flight before. Of course, I also don't have a ton of money, so
yeah, you can they can afford to just blast out on a regular airline ticket and just get the next first class one and not even sweat it.
Right. Where I'm like, oh crap! If I don't get my plane, the world has just ended, man.
Well, and also, if you don't have that first class money, you probably don't have the money to get that call the night before that's like, hey, you might want to skip this flight tomorrow.
I was going to throw out the idea, though, of, memories, like especially big cultural, big events that everyone remembers having, like quantum push in both directions. Like, what else do we have just before? They have to take the Twin Towers out of Zoolander digitally, I believe. The Spider-Man trailer was him catching the villains or whatever between the towers. So that suddenly became like, ooh, that's weird. There was that rap album that had the Twin Towers exploding that was released on like September 10th or something. So
the coup. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if we looked back at like 1990, would we find like just as much kind of imagery? I don't think so.
Maybe we didn't have 4chan and Reddit and all the internet sites to like put them all together conveniently and have all the autists with infinite time on their hands to do that for us. But there's also like the Simpsons episode where there's a brochure that says, I think, 911 in the background, but the 11 is like cut off by the Twin Towers or something. Like there's a lot of predictive programming around that particular event, and I wonder how many get edited out that we don't know about. Like, these are all the ones that you hear about because either it gets leaked or they almost do it as a flex. Like, hey, we spent extra time and extra money not to offend your sensibilities. But there's probably even more that never get advertised for a host of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you can't memory hole a Simpsons episode, especially in its prime, because there were like 30 million people taping the thing on their VCRs at the time. So that's out there. Something else, the holiday special, Star Wars holiday special, they kept that under wraps for quite a while, although now it's very YouTubeable. And I think I might watch the holiday special yearly, to be honest. Although I will fast forward through the 20 minutes of Wookiees screaming sometimes.
So I don't know. I think Star Wars counts a little bit as related to Lilo and Stitch because we got aliens and galactic federations and whatnot. And
oh yeah, right at the start, my note is, this seems a bit more Star Wars than Star Trek around here.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you mentioned how the holiday special, and this kind of came back into public consciousness a little bit just because I've seen a lot of comparisons between the holiday special and the new Acolyte movie, in that no one thought that the holiday special would ever be surpassed in terms of bad reviews. And apparently the Acolyte is getting those reviews that are now making it compared to the holiday special. Are you familiar with this? Do you agree with this? I'm so far out of the loop, but I haven't seen either. I haven't seen the holiday special or the Acolyte.
Well, the holiday special is the tail end of the 70s variety show. Bruce Vilanch being the author of that. He's a writer that looks insane. He's still with us, actually. He could start making variety specials again. The Brady Bunch Variety Hour, there's a good one. Never seen that.
The Brady Bunch Variety Hour, and I have not.
Oh my God, I will send you a clip from that, which will, if you watch it, you actually will go insane. So it's just madness and terrible cheesiness. Acolyte, here's why I haven't seen it. It doesn't look interesting. It could be great. I mean, I know it had a lot of like, I know a lot of people don't like it. I know some people do like it. I don't know. I don't care. I guess that's where I am. It doesn't look interesting to me. that it's making the cardinal sin of not looking interesting to me.
So I mean, I feel like that might be a better scenario of low expectations, right? Because now if you actually do see it and it's even has a modicum of interest to you, now all of a sudden it's not bad because you were expecting something bad and it was, caught your interest. But you go into it expecting like a really good Star Wars movie and it's anything but that. Now you're disappointed, and now you're going to actually have the reason to go on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever and score it down because it didn't meet some kind of expectation. So I almost feel like Disney at this point, they might have rather people just not be interested in the Acolyte, so that maybe they'll be neutral on it in the future if it just happens to be the only thing on.
I guess they are really starting to stumble on that IP because the last movie, I don't know, I thought was I guess it made money, so it's successful, but it's like, when are they going to make a Star Wars movie? That doesn't really seem like it's in the cards at the moment. So they're focusing on the TV, which is like, diminishing returns, I suppose.
I mean, I know we don't get this until AI is advanced enough, but I would love to see a Walt Disney produced Star Wars movie. Not a Walt Disney the company, but I mean like Walt Disney the person and his sensibilities and his weird personality quirks. Him at the helm of making sure that Disney creates a Star Wars movie. That is something that I think would actually be something worthy of watching.
Would he have been as much of an IP acquirer? That's an interesting question, because they certainly, I mean, I guess you didn't do that in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. That just wasn't a thing that happened at the time. So, because at that point, it's very much like...
He did the cheap version, though, right? Because he just used grim fairy tales, and that was what Disney sort of cut his teeth on, was IP, but it was like public domain IP.
Yeah. I mean, I think a few, and as they go, they start buying rights. I guess we're just seeing the evolution of how IP happens, looking at Disney's history to a great extent. Because I'm sitting here thinking, what are the first actual IPs? I mean, you got something like Zorro, which, when did Zorro even go public domain? The Thin Man, that doesn't seem like an IP. Bond, that definitely stands out as a very early, fully formed IP, I guess.
Well, I mean, Disney was purchasing rights to movies, like decades before they would get made. So in a way, that was him purchasing these IPs. Wasn't it Lady and the Tramp and 101 Dalmatians and a few of those other ones that he had just been sitting on, that it wasn't just in public domain like the Jungle Book was, I think, right. Or like the Grimm's Fairy Tales ones were.
And again, it was public domain, but Frozen was like in the works in like the late 30s. It could have been the follow-up to Snow White, but it took them 80 years to make that.
So yeah, that is interesting that at a certain point, Disney does transition to adapting other stories to like creating their own. And then one of the big Disney, I guess, money printers just becomes enforcing their IP, because now entire industries have erupted over just bootlegging Disney specific IP or things that they've adapted from the public domain world and created IP out of it. I mean, which in my opinion is like some damn good alchemy.
Yeah, you're actually here's one. You're asking about the kind of the IP trail of this movie, which isn't as strong as some other movies, but it was, as I was reading up it, I knew this was one of the first Disney movies to have like a sister relationship in any detail, which is weaponized for Frozen, right? That becomes the biggest thing in the universe. So it's like taking a bit of this vibe, putting it in something you can, more easily make merchandise out of, I guess.
I mean, that's really where this all leads to, right? It's always about the Happy Meal toys is a simplification of what I always mean by all the ancillary products.
And then Frozen knocked that one out of the park. They're still making Happy Meal toys for that one, probably. So,
well, yeah, I mean, think about it this way: Lilo and Stitch. There's not a lot of opportunity to sell like a dress-up kit. Like, what are you going to dress up as, Lilo or Stitch? But as soon as you get into that Disney Princess Land, the ability to sell all these extra little things, it just gets blown out of the park. Makeup kits and wands and wigs and just everything involved with that. That's really, I think, where Disney can shine, is like the whole Disney princess archetype. They kind of own that thing.
Speaking of the parks a little bit, did you ever encounter Stitch's alien encounter? I did not. Or the alien encounter before that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I did. Yeah, I did the original alien encounter. I never did the follow-up version of it. So I actually got to experience it. It was the thing that was like too scary for the public, and they had to close it down. So yeah, I went on it. It was a weird mismatch of an experience in Disney. I liked it, but I was freaked out by it. I thought it was a little creepier than I was expecting it to be, which is why I liked it so much. But I can totally understand it not existing anymore. Lilo and Stitch makes a little more sense. I assume that the creature that like scurries around and you feel it comes up on your neck and all that, is that Stitch in the
that's now Stitch version? Correct. So okay. It's cuter.
See, well, yeah, that makes sense actually.
So what is it, an alien encounter, a xenomorph or something?
It kind of, it was, I mean, not by name, but it was sort of like a xenomorph, exoskeleton-y, like scary, sharp thing. I believe it was voiced by Vanessa Williams. I think she had a part in that attraction as like the VO or something. I don't think I'm making that up.
Sorry, I thought the alien would just start, the terrifying alien would just start like singing,
no, I don't think Vanessa
soul ballads
Williams
or something.
She didn't do that part of it, but
that would be an interesting attraction.
That was when I was working in the park. I remember going to that exhibit right towards the tail end because everyone knew that it was about to close and they knew why it was about to close. So it was kind of like the fun thing to go and do because you knew that no one was going to experience that after it was over.
Right. We do get a few weird. Well, I think I mentioned when we did Sleeping Beauty, we had the castle tour in Japan, which was notoriously terrifying. I did that one, so I mean that was actually quite fun. I have fond memories of that, but it would make small children poo their pants. So
yeah, that I think the alien experience probably takes the cake of the scariest Disney ride. The other one too, my absolute favorite, since we're already on this weird tangent, but freaking Splash Mountain, man, that was like my go-to absolute favorite ride. I love the dark ride part of it. I like everything about it, the songs, and that's gone. I believe that they turned that one into Frog Princess.
Right. Come to Japan. We still have Splash Mountain. Yep. I don't think they're going to change it in Japan because, there's not the cultural baggage, so nobody cares. And, Tiana's not that popular. So, I see where I did in the States. I watched a ride through,
Well, does your Splash Mountain have any references to Uncle Remus?
No, it's a copy of the others. So it's Brer Frog as the narrator still, although he does speak Japanese in the Japanese version.
Well, in the Orlando version, it's just a small little after effect, but I believe there was an Uncle Remus silhouette at the very end of the ride, and I think early, maybe early 90s or late 80s, they had the Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I think that was it. There was one of the songs that Uncle Remus sings.
Zippity-doo-dah, probably. Yeah.
They had a rendition where like he was on a TV screen and you saw Uncle Remus as the Zippity-doo-dah song was going. So they did the Splash Mountain did at some point acknowledge Uncle Remus, which I think slowly got phased out. But I just wonder, is there any do people in Japan even know Uncle Remus is part of that?
I mean, people in America barely even knew what the Splash Mountain characters were. So I'm sure the Japanese audiences don't. I remember the first time being with Japanese friends, years ago on Japanese Splash Mountain, just being funny think it's funny because, I'm from Atlanta, right? So Joel Handler Handler, I just said his name wrong. But anyway, it's got a museum and stuff. You can visit that. You could see original Uncle Remus, Joel Chandler Harris. There, I needed to give myself a moment there. But yeah, I'm like, here's all these local characters, but now they're singing in Japanese, and I'm in Japan, and it was a really surreal ride on Splash Mountain.
So I think the does the Lilo and Stitch have a ride in Japan that's the same as the one that's in Orlando? Does that even still exist?
I'm gonna have to put that into my computer. I haven't been to Disneyland for like 10 years, I think. Stitch Tokyo ride. I think there's something. Stitch Encounter Tokyo Disney Resort. Yeah, they have a Stitch Encounter. Okay. I did not ride the Stitch Encounter though. Oh, wait. Stitch Encounter is like Turtle Talk with Crush. You talk to Stitch. It's not the like, okay. It's just called Stitch Encounter, which is confusing. Stitch is pretty popular here. As much, I guess, as it is in the States. Exclusive to Tokyo Disneyland, similar to Turtle Talk with Crush. So that's it, I guess.
So there's another theory that Stitch is an android, which isn't as salacious of a theory as like all the other CIA ones and stuff, but it is interesting because it explains how he's got like, quote, programming built in from these aliens and how he's indestructible and fireproof and all this stuff. But when you said the like talk to Stitch and the Stitch experience and the turtle, it reminds me there was also this really creepy exhibit in the Orlando Disney World. I think it was at Epcot, and they had like a robot that had like a see-through body and you could see all the gears, but they would put like a wig on it or something, and you could ask it questions or give it like statements to say. And I think it would like say people's names. It was in one of these little areas where they would show like all the future projects coming out. But this was, late 80s, early 90s. So everything was all about things that weren't really happening, but they were making you think of it. So yeah, they had like all these little robot helpers, and they had like little vacuum cleaners that were basically the size of like a mini fridge that would like wander around and had like eyeballs bolted into it. Does any of this ring any bells for you? I remember
it is a little that was I'm pretty sure what you're talking about was in Communicore, later interventions. Have you seen the recent theming of that area?
I have not.
It's now a big empty room with tables and chairs.
Oh, I was expecting so much cooler.
No, the idea is it's used for events now or whatever, but it's like, yeah, that was an attraction, folks. So, the American park seemed to be under a lot of criticism recently for turning into increasing garbage. But hey, out here in Japan, they're kicking nicely. They just opened 4 new rides at Disney Sea. They got parades, they got shows, the food's good. Come to Japan. And they're actually, the yen's so worthless right now. A lot of people are realizing it's somewhat like Disney. Once you do the plane ticket, Disney's like a lot cheaper in Japan right now.
Does that count as your plug for this episode? Or are you just plugging the country
Come
of
to Japan? Come to Japan, yeah. I'm plugging Japan today. No, but really, like my parents are coming again this year. They came last year. Usually they don't come that quickly, but it's like the yen is so low right now that everything, if you have American money, everything is like 30 to 40% off just instantly.
We're tempting.
We're heading straight for the third world here.
I'll go through the rest of my notes rapid fire here, I guess. The movie again, Galactic Federation, alien references. They reference by name illegal genetic experimentation in a Disney movie. I think that's kind of cool. There's so Stitch's official name is Experiment 626 originally, and 626 is an angel number. I don't know if you know what angel numbers are, but
I've heard that before. Yeah. My question in my notes is, do we want to do any numerology on that? So I guess that counts.
we can, but we don't, because I don't necessarily want to fall into the habit of always having to go through and do gematria on every damn number that comes up in a Disney movie. That can be, how there's some podcasts out there where they'll just watch like one movie like 40 times, and every episode is just like new observations on that watch through. So maybe if we get to the end of all this and we're like, let's do it again, like maybe then we'll introduce gematria and numerology into all these. But until then, I don't want to start that trend. But it was interesting that 626 is an angel number, and the properties of that angel number is supposed to like bond family together. So I don't know if that just seems, overly appropriate for this particular plot of the movie, but it just kind of fits in. I don't know if it was intentional, probably not.
If the Indigo child was intentional, I'm going to guess that was also intentional, because I mean that's kind of a fun Easter egg to put in if you know what you're doing, Fair
point. They have the concept of weaponry and guns that can lock into a genetic signature, which I think is kind of cool. They basically extract some of Stitch's alien blood and they inject it into a gun, and then the gun just automatically traces him, which feels somewhat dark and on the nose for a Disney movie, which I think is really cool still. I didn't dive into the numerology on this, but if anyone cares, when Experiment 626 finds its way to Earth, they mention that Earth is Quadrant 17, Section 005, Area 51. So the Earth
one of those stands out.
is in Area 51. Yeah. And I don't know what Quadrant 17 and Section 5, if they have any significance. That Lilo also knows voodoo, and she's actually performing practical voodoo, and she does it in a way that like she knows what she's doing. Like this wasn't her first time putting like a voodoo curse on somebody, where she has each of the girls that were being mean to her in school dressed up as a spoon, like, little sympathetic voodoo dolls, and then puts them inside a jar of pickle juice and like shakes it and puts it aside. So I don't know. I thought that was also interesting that like the protagonist is also casting like literal black magic spells on her enemies, and she's a bully. Yeah, she is a witch in this case. Like, is this the first Disney movie where the protagonist is a witch instead of the white witch or the princess?
I guess that's why she's not a princess. Okay. But it makes her way more interesting. Well, Mary Poppins, we straight out came, okay, she's a villain, where
I guess Angela Lansbury also bed knobs and broomsticks. She's literally a witch.
Again, Lilo just maybe has like what you could refer to as behavioral problems, although in the terms of this movie, it's, that works, right? Because that's how the movie works.
Stitch is watching an actual version of, I believe, 1955 movie Tarantula, which I don't know if this is accurate, but I think it's the first time in a Disney animated movie we see an actual non-Disney live action movie as part of the background, like composited in.
Yeah, and then a few years later, I just rewatched WALL-E for my other podcast, but that actually has a live actor, and I think it's Fred Willard is in WALL-E, like not animated. So we'll see a little more of that a few movies down the line. A variation, but yeah, it was kind of shocking just to see any live action footage in the movie.
And then the last note I had was just that they do establish 2 alien rules in this movie. They're pretty basic, but it's that they can't be seen because it would cause panic, and that ultimately all of their rules boil down to they can't hurt humans because humans are mosquito food and mosquitoes are an endangered alien species.
But that was all BS, I guess. So
maybe I think that there could actually be something to that, because if humans are not the superior intellect, then maybe that lie, the only lie was that Agent Bubbles was saying it was a lie, but really he knows that humans indeed are mosquito food for aliens, which would make a lot more sense, again, as to why he cares about the Indigo child and Stitch and everything, because Stitch could actually cause an issue for those mosquitoes and their food supply.
Yeah, I'm actually saying here earlier, I was like, oh, you could make a movie based on Agent Bubbles instead. I'm like, actually, it kind of did. That's kind of Men in Black 3 when you think about it. That's like Lilo and Stitch from the other. I mean, obviously, it doesn't have a Stitch in it or a Lilo, but it's like just, yeah, that sort of making the deal with the aliens, so many years ago, and having to keep track of people over time. And yeah. sort of a similar vibe there.
They suck our blood, which seems like the perfect sort of alien species coming to feast on humans.
Right. That's the low-key version, although you get the bites and occasionally you get malaria, right? So it's not all fun and games. I still have the mosquitoes are eating me up right now, so I've been a blood bag for them, I guess. By the way, I was going to respond to your Android comment. I think you could pretty firmly say he's like a, like Cylon, Battlestar Galactica Cylon sort of android, kind of like biological android that you get in the reboot of those. So that almost doesn't seem like a theory.
Well, he doesn't state exactly how Stitch was made, but yeah, it could be like there's a skeleton, like a cybernetic skeleton that they like build the organic flesh around, because he cites the phrase genetic programming a few different times, but I almost feel like that would have to be a combination of actual programming, like engineering, like a hardware, software, and firmware level, in addition to whatever organic material they make them out of,
right,
which is fireproof and bulletproof and impact proof.
Yeah, honestly, I think that take just makes it more interesting and a little more sci-fi. I do appreciate that. While it is goofy Star Wars, there is a notable sci-fi streak in this movie. The CIA guy, Bubbles helps that along too, because that adds your touch of Men in Black, and maybe that's one of the reasons I like this one so much. Is I'm a sci-fi guy, and it's got an undercurrent of that is sometimes a rather large current.
They also imply that Stitch can drown to death.
Oh yeah, keep out of the water. I mean, that isn't the Signs movie too. The aliens hate water. So
and gremlins.
Glasses of water all around your house. Well, that makes more gremlins, doesn't it? You get the gremlins wet, you get more gremlins. So keep
Mogwai. Keep Mogwai away from water.
Yeah. Did you have any more notes, or shall we wrap this guy up?
That was, top 3: CIA, aliens, genetic manipulation, Indigo children. It's really hard because so much of this is exoteric and not esoteric, right? It's not occulted. It's like out for you to see. And it's just about, hey, this is how normal these concepts are now at this point in 2002. So it's we're in for a bumpy ride for the rest of these movies, because now I guess everything's just predictive programming and revelation of the method from here on out. It's no more occultism.
Well, I think it depends a little bit on who's making it too. I maybe it is like the occult stuff comes more when the movie is made more by committee, and one of the members of that committee is slipping stuff in, as opposed to Lilo and Stitch or the Pixar movies, where there's generally one person like driving the train, so it's all on the surface. Like what they want is in the movie, where in the committee movies, maybe somebody's kind of slipping a few things they want in the movie, but it's not the main necessarily on the surface. We'll see. So next week, it's more than a plug. It's a threat about going to Japan, because we're going to Senno Chihiro next week, Spirited Away, which this is the point where Disney spends a few years distributing Ghibli movies in America, and I can't skip over those.
Okay, this will be an interesting one, just because I've never watched an anime ever with an occult lens on. In fact, I think I've only ever watched anime in like very weird moods, and none of them were really like paying attention to the story as much as just the aesthetics. I think that's the main reason I've watched anime, was for aesthetics over anything else.
Well, just to preview it, I guess this won't be interesting, because some of the stuff to me will be very exo, whereas for you it will not, because maybe you don't know the culture, and I'll be like, oh yeah, everybody knows that, So that should be an interesting.
So is Spirited Away the World War II one?
No, that's the wind. The wind flies. The wind rises. Spirited Away is the haunted bathhouse.
Okay, yeah, I'm in for something. I don't know if I've seen it or not, so it'll be interesting.
Lots of weird monsters in it. So
now to be clear,
yokai.
Is this occult Disney by technicality only, or is there anything Disney related to this at all?
It's not, except that Hayao Miyazaki is basically considered the Walt Disney of Japan, and he's still living. So, he just came out of retirement again to make The Boy and the Heron last year, but he's firmly kind of seen as like the Walt Disney of Ghibli. So,
okay. Prepare to do the heavy lifting then on the
sure.
Studio Ghibli ones, where you're going to have to give me some insight as to some of the symbolism stuff that I miss out on.
Yeah, but this actually, I think Lilo and Stitch and Spirited Away were the were up for the Animated Academy Award that year with Spirited Away taking it. But that's an unfair battle anyway. Sometimes, you got two movies in a year, they both deserve it. They should have come out in different years. Oops. But bringing this one into Bay, I guess. What's going on in your universe?
I'm hopefully getting The Chosen One and the Adult Occult Illuminati series printed and shipped by the time whoever's listening to this, even on Patreon or even the public version, should all be out. Hopefully I'm not shooting myself in the foot and like running into delays. But yeah, two huge projects. And I guess I'll do a quick little like soft announcement of another big one coming up. But I've been working with Donut from Donut Factory on an Illuminati pamphlet that breaks down the entire history of the Bavarian Illuminati and their dynamics with the Rosicrucians and the Jesuits and the Freemasons. And if any of those names sound interesting, you're going to absolutely love this pamphlet. We've been working on it for over a year, and it's going to have the same artist that's been doing all my other pamphlets, does Sam Tripoli's Chaos Twins comic, something that we're really hoping to spread around like wildfire and get like the whole world re-interested in the Illuminati again, because it just goes through little like resurgences over time, and it's way overdue for one. And we're not talking about the Jay-Z, Beyonce, hip-hop Illuminati, which is in the pamphlet. So look out for that one. I don't know if we've got a website set up yet, so I won't plug it, but sure as hell I'm going to be plugging the hell out of this thing for months to come.
All right. Other than plugging Visit Japan, I do a lot of podcasting on Patreon at Podcastio Podcastius, where I do really good movies and really bad movies according to IMDb users on Films and Filth, The Twilight Zone on Time Enough Podcast, and Space 1999 on Podcast 1999. Ukulele time. Oh, you know what? We went through this whole episode without mentioning Elvis. What do you know?
I know I brought up Elvis.
Yeah. I guess I came in prepared to talk about Elvis for 30 minutes, but we'll save that for another time.
I'll just say as a parting note, if you like Elvis, you owe it to yourself to watch 30,000 Miles to Graceland.
Ready for a cosmic conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick, moon landings, and the CIA? Go visit nasacomic.com.
Nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com, go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com. Oh, nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. About nasacomic.com, go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com.
Never a Straight Answer is a 40-page comic about Stanley Kubrick directing the Apollo space missions.
Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com.
This is the perfect read for comic, Kubrick, or conspiracy fans of all ages. For more details, visit nasacomic.com.
Spread the word with propaganda packs, all for just $40 shipped at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
These huge all-weather slaps will last in public for years to come. Remind citizens that birds are not real, self-immolation is an option, and might make you magnetic. Do your part and get a propaganda pack today from paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
What are you waiting for? Go to paranoidamerican.com right now and get a paranoid propaganda pack.
cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all the land and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
We're all American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all the land and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlight your brain? Give you the flight, my plane paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hate maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.